I am the simp supporting male character in the novel, destined for a tragic ending, but I transmigrated into the real world. All because a wealthy heiress, a reader of the novel, was heartbroken by my sorrowful ending. She wished for the heavens to send her a devoted supporting male character like me, and so, the system gave me the opportunity to win her over. Naively, I thought that my heroine had finally arrived, and that lovers would end up together, saying one thing but meaning another, tossing me aside like a worn-out shoe. However, just as I was about to be erased by the system, the second female lead brought me back into the novel world. We got married, and had a daughter, until many years later, the long silent real-world system spoke up once more. Chapter 1. The moment the system's voice returned, my wife Misty and I were comforting our daughter, who had just finished chemotherapy. Eva was clutching Misty's hand, pouting and whimpering in pain. I was about to comfort her, stroking the bunny ears on her little pink hat, when a familiar yet unfamiliar voice interrupted me. Mr. Paperman, long time no see. In this world, there was only one that addressed me this way. It called itself the real-world system. Looking at my daughter, pale-faced on the hospital bed, it sighed softly. I thought that after you returned, you would live a good life. Truthfully, I was doing quite well. My wife was gentle, and my daughter was adorable. The only flaw was that my 5-year-old daughter had been diagnosed with acute leukemia this year. The system coughed, drawing my attention back. 6 years ago, the female lead whom you failed to win over in the real-world mission came to this world with your first child. They are looking for you everywhere. If you can convince them to return to the real world, the system will automatically cure your daughter's illness. Will you accept this mission? Chapter 2. If it hadn't brought it up, that peculiar experience often felt like nothing more than a bizarre dream I'd once had. I lived in the world of a novel, the quintessential second male lead, loving the heroine but unable to have her. I became the perfect backup. Then the author stopped updating, causing chaos in the novel's world. The second female lead, Misty, ceased her pursuit of the male lead and fell deeply in love with me. And me, I suddenly fell in love with a reader. I heard a voice from the real world, a girl choking back her sobs as she said, "Ugh, what's so good about the male lead anyway? The second lead is the best, rich, gentle, and deeply affectionate. Who wouldn't love a man like that?" Many a late night, I watched her laugh and cry for me, baring her little tiger teeth in my defense. At that point, a so-called real-world system bound itself to me. It called me Mr. Paperman with a dark sense of humor. The mission was to go to the real world and win over this reader. She lived in the real world, but she was like the heroine in the book. Her fiancé, her unforgettable first love, left her for his childhood sweetheart. If I could make her fall in love with me, the mission would be complete. I could stay in the real world forever with a new identity. No longer a soulless character in a story. The reader's name was Carolina, a wealthy heiress. Her fiancé was an influential figure who matched her social status. When her fiancé hurt her for the sake of his childhood sweetheart, I stayed by her side, never abandoning her, cheering her up, surprising her. Gradually, she no longer resisted me. After one heartbreak, she kissed me. I couldn't hold back. Just that once, we had a child. I planned a grand proposal party for her, but suddenly, she distanced herself from me, saying, "David, my parents won't agree to our marriage. If I tell them now, my dad will definitely force me to get an abortion. Let's wait." Okay, once the baby is born, they'll surely support us being together. Besides, you have nothing right now. You say you want to marry me, but can you give me the happiness I want? Chapter 3. However, after Carolina gave birth to a son, her parents, though not scolding her, hated me even more and opposed Carolina marrying me. They even insisted that the child take the last name Lou. His name was Paul Lou. I found out later, her unforgettable first love also had the last name Lou. One time, when I came home from work early and saw the nanny cruelly pinching the tender flesh on his bottom, I took it upon myself to care for him. I handed over the company to my assistant and became a full-time dad. Old man Lou, the richest man in Jiangdu, had countless businesses, and I never fully understood the scope of his enterprises. He had only one daughter, Carolina, and after the birth of the child, he valued her even more. He often mocked me, but he adored Paul. For Paul's second birthday, he gifted him 60% of the company's shares, temporarily managed by Carolina until Paul came of age. On his 18th birthday, they would belong to him. When it was time for preschool, I was still considering where would best suit his education, but he had already received an invitation from an international preschool named after him. Though the preschool accepted public admissions, Paul clearly fit in effortlessly. He made a little girl cry. When I went to pick him up, the girl's mother complained to me directly. Seeing Paul, who stubbornly insisted he did nothing wrong, made me inexplicably angry. It seemed he'd been spoiled. For the first time, I shed my gentle fatherly persona. I taught him that he shouldn't bully others. He kicked me in front of everyone. He said, "The entire preschool is mine. I can do whatever I want. Who are you to tell me what to do?" Grandpa even said our family wouldn't care to take you in if you wanted to marry into it. Paul threw a tantrum, refusing to go home with me. Old man Lou came to pick him up in person. I tried visiting, but the butler blocked me at the door. After a month, Thinking Paul must have calmed down, I brought a pile of gifts to visit again. I wanted to tell him that Daddy shouldn't have scolded him in front of everyone and that I'd be more mindful in the future. But I saw him in the garden at home, being lifted high into the air by Martin Lou. Nearby, Carolina stood with a serene smile, watching the two interact happily. Paul laughed heartily, then said something I'll never forget. Daddy Lou, I wish you were my real dad. Grandpa says my dad is useless, not good enough for Mom, but you are. Chapter 4. I left all the gifts there. Without alerting anyone, I turned and left. Behind me, Martin held Paul in his arms, glancing faintly at Carolina. But your mom already had you with someone else. Carolina looked panicked and quickly clung to his arm. When Paul comes of age, he'll inherit all my father's assets. It will benefit you too. Martin laughed aloud and looked at Paul. Would you give up your original dad? Paul hesitated for a moment and replied, yes. Grandpa said a real man wouldn't stick with weaklings. Everyone dislikes my dad, so I dislike him too. Carolina chuckled softly, though she said nothing. Her eyes sparkled with delight. At last, I understood what it meant to love a dragon but fear its presence. Late at night, Carolina sympathized with the secondary male lead of a novel world, yet she could never let go of the leading men in her own life. The outcome was evident. In any world, the male lead always shines. No matter where I was destined to be that damn secondary male lead. How humiliating, I said. Forget it. I won't go on with this stupid quest anymore. I awakened the system and voiced my desire. Chapter 5. The system stayed silent for a long time before replying. Are you aware of the consequences of giving up the mission? Of course. I knew I'd be completely erased, disappearing without a trace. I couldn't remain in the real world, nor could I return to the world within the book. In one place, I'd be a cuckold. In the other, an empty shell of a man without a soul. Nothing was turning out right. I cursed in anger. Hurry up, erase me completely, or I'll call you my grandson. The system replied. Sir, raging impotently won't solve anything. All right. I was exposed. It said, they don't have a final ending yet. You still have a chance. Are you sure you want to give up? As a character born in a novel, I knew better than anyone how strong the male lead's destiny was. It wasn't something I could overturn with sheer effort. Rather than humiliate myself further, I'd rather bow out early, preserving my dignity. The system sensed my thoughts and sighed. It said it understood. I spent 2 carefree days, waiting for my disappearance. Then, out of the blue, the system excitedly spoke up. You can return to the original novel world. I was stunned for a moment. Didn't you say I couldn't go back? It said. That was true. But the second female lead from the original novel learned about your mission. Upon hearing that you'd fail and be erased, she exchanged her future fortune to bring you back. Suddenly, the image of Misty, the second female lead in that world, appeared in my mind, gentle and quiet, following me silently every day after the novel world collapsed. In her own way, she was just like me, uneasy. I asked the system, what was the price? It answered honestly, it's still unknown, but it's certain to be something difficult to accept. Since the deal has been made, you have no right to refuse. You will be forcibly returned to the original novel world. Chapter 6. I returned. Misty still followed me around every day, carefully handing me the lunchboxes she made herself. Instinctively, I pulled her into my embrace. We naturally started dating, got married, and had a daughter. Until one day, our daughter fell ill, and the system appeared once again. I had a feeling I knew the price Misty had paid to bring me back. The system, seeing me silent for a long time, spoke again. I think you should take on this mission for your daughter. Besides, it seems your first child is also having some issues. His relationship with his mother isn't very harmonious. I wasn't particularly concerned about Paul's life, but if completing the mission would heal my daughter, then I had a reason I couldn't ignore. Neither Misty's nor my bone marrow matched. Waiting in line for a transplant could take who knows how long. Eva couldn't wait. I accept, but I must explain everything to my wife. Please give me a day. The system agreed. All right. See you then. After I explained everything, Misty quickly processed the information, accepting the fact that the system had appeared again. Smiling, she told me I must complete the mission and bring back our healthy daughter. But her trembling hands betrayed her anxiety. Half joking, half serious, she said, David, you won't fall for her again, right? You won't leave me and our daughter, will you? Chapter 7. A child's voice came from nearby. Mom, it's so hot. Why don't we just call Dad? How long do we have to keep waiting here every day? The system brought me directly in front of the mother and son. I stood in the shadows, watching them complain to each other. Carolina said, how should I know your dad's phone number? Paul had grown taller, but the baby fat on his face hadn't completely disappeared. I had to admit, he looked a lot like me. Hearing his mom's complaint, Paul's excitement faded from his eyes. I sighed and walked up to them, saying, looking for me. The moment Paul saw me, his eyes lit up. He wanted to rush into my arms like he did when he was little but hesitated out of a newfound sense of shyness. In the end, he just walked quickly to me and called out excitedly, Dad. I looked away indifferently. You said it yourself, Martin is your dad. Paul's expression changed, and he stammered, no, it's not like that. Seeing this, Carolina patted his head. Oh, Come on. He's just a kid. Words mean nothing at his age. He's just being childish. You're his father. How can you take it so seriously? Her tone was casual, like she was chiding an irresponsible father. Where's Martin? That man you loved so much. Carolina's smile froze for a moment before turning desolate. He's a scumbag. Not long after you left, he went back and married his childhood sweetheart. You're still the best, gentle and considerate, good to me, and good to our son. David, I know I was wrong. Will you forgive me? As she spoke, she handed her bag to me, saying, it's heavy. I stared at her without moving. In the end, she awkwardly withdrew her hand. Chapter 8, I said, come on, I'll take you both somewhere. In the car, Paul was excited, watching the scenery fly past the window. The book world was not much different from the real world. He asked, Dad, are you taking us to your house here? Will the house be as big as Grandpa's? Have you prepared a room for me? Like when I was little, filled with Iron Man stuff. Paul pulled his head back from the window. His cheeks flushed as he looked at me. Carolina stroked his head and gave me a sideways glance. Of course, your dad only has one child, you. He loves you the most. Seeing Paul's hopeful gaze reminded me of the past. I had decorated a room just for him, filled with Iron Man figures. His favorite. He was thrilled when he saw it, wrapping his arms around my neck and saying in his sweet little voice, Daddy's the best. Thank you, Daddy. But one day, he came home and had the nanny remove all the figures. I asked him why, and he gave me a disdainful look. Grandpa said only useless men fantasize about heroes. Real men are their own heroes and create their own world. After that, expensive paintings and ornaments filled his room, replacing the toys. He held a car key in his small hand, waving it in front of me. See, Grandpa says I can drive it when I'm 18, but you, Dad, can't afford it. That's why you buy me these cheap things to try and please me. Remembering this, I looked away, turning my gaze to the window. I said, no, these cheap things aren't worthy of making you happy. Paul stared at me, stunned, as if he'd forgotten what he used to say. Carolina lowered her head without a word. The rest of the ride was silent. At the hospital entrance, mother and son looked at me in confusion. Carolina asked, aren't we going home? I stepped inside first and said, my wife and daughter are here. What home would I be going to? Carolina's face turned pale instantly. She pulled Paul along, quickly following me. David, stop joking. Are you trying to make me mad? I can apologize, but please don't say things like that. I'm your wife. You only have Paul as your son. Where did a daughter come from? It wasn't a joke. She could see for herself. Misty was poised. She ignored Carolina's hostile gaze, smiled gently, and extended her hand. Thank you for taking care of David in the real world. In contrast, Carolina, a spoiled young lady, couldn't stand anyone encroaching on what she considered hers, even if she had given it up herself. She gritted her teeth and tried to approach Misty, but I blocked her. She paused for a moment, then turned and shoved Paul hard. It's all your fault. You drove your father away, and now you're happy, aren't you? Chapter 9. Paul fell to the ground, looking up at his mom in confusion. You were the one who taught me to be like this. Grandpa too. Why is it my fault? He didn't understand why Carolina was blaming him. Carolina pulled him up roughly and retorted, nonsense. When did I teach you that? It's all your own fault for being so thoughtless. Now apologize to your dad. Beg for his forgiveness. Paul, just a small child, had his clothes pulled out of shape. I stepped forward to stop her. Why, Carolina, you never cherished it, and now you're putting all the blame on a child. How he treated me before, he learned it all from you. Misty, seeing the small child on the ground, couldn't bear it. She gently crouched down and helped him up. Paul, however, directed his anger at her. Get lost, you vile woman. You stole my dad. You're just a witch. So young, yet so full of foul language. I turned to Carolina, and she gave Paul an encouraging look, daring to insult Misty. That I couldn't tolerate. Looking down at him, my tone was filled with seriousness and disappointment. How did your mother raise you to be like this? Should such words come from a child's mouth? I don't care how things are over there, and I can't control it, but if you come to me, don't let me hear those words again. Paul lowered his head. I walked over to Misty, wrapping my arm around her waist, silently comforting her. Don't be afraid, I mouthed. Carolina was on the verge of losing her sanity. Watching our silent interaction, she raised her hand, walking straight up to Misty. I quickly grabbed her wrist. I said, touch her, try it. The commotion woke up our daughter in the hospital bed. She asked, who are you? Why are you bullying my mom? Only then did Carolina notice the little girl in the hospital bed. She lowered her hand, defeated, seemingly struggling internally. She said, dejectedly, you really even have a daughter? Seeing my life now, she should have given up, I thought. But it seemed she saw this as a game of endless pursuit. Chapter 10. She said, David, you love me so much. You can't possibly give up on me. You must want to get back at me for how I treated you before, right? That's okay. I can wait for you. At the hospital entrance, she took Paul and left. Paul kept looking back, reluctant to leave me. I rubbed my temples helplessly. They won't leave. What about my daughter? The system's sudden voice echoed in my mind. Looks like this mission is no easier than the previous one. Huh, I replied. System, we've known each other for a long time. Do you have any ideas? It sighed. Honestly, our entire department struggles to understand the complexity of human emotions. You don't cherish something when you have it, but once it's lost, you fight tooth and nail to get it back. What for? I want to know what she wants too. Go ask her. It continued. Hey, why not just enjoy having both of them? This system was definitely not trustworthy. I spat at it. Get lost. The system, knowing it had misspoken, awkwardly chuckled. Just a joke. I came to remind you, your daughter's time is running out. Good luck, my paperman. I felt irritable. Eva's doctor had spoken to me about her condition. I couldn't pin all my hopes on Carolina and Paul. Given Eva's current state, she was critically ill. If a suitable donor could be found, surgery was possible. So, I started moving between major hospitals and reached out to various charitable donation organizations. I also donated $5 million to a local children's welfare organization. Fortune favors those who give. I hoped for a miracle. At times like these, I thought being the secondary male lead wasn't too bad. Looked down on in that world. But here, I was a wealthy, domineering CEO. More money than I could spend. One day, I heard there was a potential donor, and I was getting ready to visit. Suddenly, Paul showed up. He timidly tugged at my sleeve. Dad, it's been 3 days. Why haven't you come to find me and Mom? At last, I realized where the constant sense of someone following me had come from these past few days. Carolina always had that selfish streak, never considering others, even her own child. In the heat of midsummer, she stayed comfortably in an air-conditioned room, waiting for me to return. She even added a second layer of insurance, sending a child under 10 to tug at my heartstrings. I sighed. Looking down at the sweat on Paul's forehead, I said, I'm going somewhere. Do you want to come with me? He broke into a big smile, nodding enthusiastically as he clambered into the car. I secured him in the back seat and then got into the driver's seat. Along the way, Paul curiously touched everything. Dad, your car is so cool. Grandpa ordered one 3 years ago but still hasn't gotten it. So, my dad must actually be a pretty amazing person. Right. I stayed silent. Paul, sensing he had said something wrong, quietly muttered an apology. I drove steadily and replied, the person you should apologize to isn't me. He stammered. Well, maybe I'll apologize to that lady next time. After all, he was my child, and there was still hope. I hoped that when he returned, he could still have a good life. Chapter 11. When we arrived at the donor's home, the donor had changed her mind. The volunteers were driven away as she shouted hysterically. You can't force me. The people outside tried to communicate patiently. Miss, no one is forcing you, but you signed the donation agreement. We're just here for a follow-up. The woman inside was emotionally unstable and even called the police. When the police arrived, everyone scattered, seeing that today would also end in failure. Paul seemed a little stunned. He asked, what are they doing? I replied, a young lady wanted to do something good, but got scared and backed out at the last moment. Can she do that? I nodded. Of course. No one has the right to force anyone to do something against their will. Paul lowered his head. Does that mean Mom and I don't have the right to force you to come back with us either? I patted his head without saying anything. This trip wasn't entirely in vain after all. On the way back, Paul kept looking at his expensive smartwatch, his face growing more troubled. He asked me to slow down, saying, Dad, I'm feeling a bit carsick. Could you drive a little slower? He didn't have this issue when he was younger, but I eased off the accelerator, slowing down. I asked where he lived, intending to take him home. He hesitated, refusing to say, I'm hungry. Could you take me to get something to eat? After eating, he wanted to see my place. I thought of Eva in the hospital and finally lost my patience. Paul, you need to go back to your mom. My daughter is waiting for me. I can't always be with you. He looked up suddenly, tears welling in his wide eyes. But you're my dad too. Why can't you stay with me? I shook my head. No, you said it yourself. You wanted Martin to be your dad. I was young and didn't know any better. How could I make him understand? I said seriously, age is never an excuse. Didn't your grandpa teach you to be a real man? A real man stands by his actions. Carolina's genes were strong. Paul resembled her so much. I insisted on taking him back. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Misty. David, come back quickly. But then I heard Carolina's voice, shouting, bitch, calling for help. Beep, beep, beep. The line went dead amidst the noise. I had no time to think. I turned and headed for the hospital. Paul clung to my leg. Stay with me. I picked him up and threw him into the car, slamming on the accelerator. Paul, I'm very disappointed in you. Chapter 12. A child under 10 might not understand the full weight of those words, but he instinctively tried to explain. Mom made me do it. She said she had something to do at the hospital and told me to keep you busy. Ever since you left, Mom has only been going on dates. When that man got married, she started drinking again. Then she missed you, but couldn't see you, and blamed me, saying it was my fault. No one loves me except Grandpa. She said if I helped her bring you back, she'd love me again. I didn't do anything wrong. I just want my dad back. I pounded the steering wheel, pushing the car to its speed limit. Carolina, you are truly despicable. In the hospital room, Carolina had brought a group of people and pinned Misty down. My usually gentle, well-dressed wife was disheveled, with clear slap marks on her face. Eva was crying in fear, the needle in her hand dislodged, blood flowing from the vein. Misty, heartbroken, tried to break free to reach Eva. Doctors outside were frantic, but tall bodyguards blocked their way, refusing to let them in. Carolina shouted hysterically, "David is mine. Who the hell are you? Take your sick little brat and get lost, or die, taking someone else's man, slut, homewrecker." With that, she even had someone try to rip off Misty's clothes, like seducing people. Let's show everyone just how cheap you are. I fought my way through the bodyguards at the door, and as soon as I stepped inside, I saw this scene. I kicked away the man's wandering hand. Not satisfied, I ground my foot down on it until I heard the sickening crunch. The doctors rushed in, moving Eva to another room for examination. I took off my jacket, wrapping the trembling Misty in it, holding her close. Seeing me, Carolina didn't panic. Instead, she glared at Paul. "Useless waste," I said. "Carolina, you've gone too far this time." She looked at me defiantly. "So what? These people were hired by my dad. Didn't you know? My dad's business has expanded here too. Those useless bodyguards you hired are nothing to deal with. So, David, you'll never escape me. How do you think you can get rid of me?" After the two worlds connected, cross-world trade and commerce began. Recently, several people had come to introduce themselves, saying that business leaders from the other side wanted to get in on the action. A strong dragon couldn't suppress a local snake. Most of the industries here were in my name, so they wanted to meet me. I kept a low profile, and not many people knew my true identity. Because of Eva's illness, I wasn't in the mood, so I refused. Turns out it was her dad. I took out my phone and made a call. The person on the other end hurriedly agreed. Less than half an hour later, someone arrived. Carolina saw the man and called out excitedly, "Uncle He, why are you here? I told you just to send people, you didn't need to come in person." Then she looked at me. "See, Uncle He is a big shot here. You may have a little money, but how can you compete with me? Why not come back and live a good life? I've already apologized." But the man, Uncle He, was sweating profusely. He asked Carolina, "The thing you mentioned, is it about hitting someone?" And it was Madam and Miss. Carolina looked confused. "So what if it was, Madam, Miss, Uncle He? What are you talking about?" Chapter 13. Hearing my identity, Carolina was stunned. Uncle He wailed, "You've really gotten me into trouble this time." Uncle He was merely a butler of the Wong family. I couldn't understand how Carolina, who had seen the world since childhood, could be so short-sighted. I asked, "Does your father still want to do business here?" After calming Misty down, I slowly walked over to her. Carolina shed her sharp exterior, displaying a pitiful look that I used to find impossible to resist. She said, "You've changed. You never treated me like this before, but now." Looking at her only made me feel disgusted. I gently tapped my watch and said, "You have 20 minutes. For every injury she sustained, you'll sustain one too. I don't hit women. You do it yourself." Carolina cried out, "Are you kidding? Would you really treat me like this?" I ignored her. Turning back to Misty, I brushed her disheveled hair behind her ear. I was about to force Carolina to act when Misty's slender fingers covered my mouth, her pale face still filled with fear. She shook her head at me. If the story hadn't deviated, Misty was supposed to be a spoiled young lady, a villainous supporting character. Her malicious attitude should have been evident. Yet here she was, showing mercy to someone who had bullied her. But perhaps I had overthought it. Misty said, "Take the child away first." Blood and all, it's not a nice sight. She gestured towards Paul, who was standing there, dumbfounded. I smiled. Misty was never a helpless flower. She wasn't vicious, but she also wasn't hypocritical. As my wife, the eldest daughter of the Yu family, she wasn't someone to be trampled on by others. Yet, as a mother, she chose to let another mother maintain her dignity in front of her child. "So, Carolina, what do you have to compete with Misty?" Paul was taken out of the room. I said, "All right, we can start now." Seeing that my expression was not feigned, Carolina clenched her fists, but she didn't dare disobey. Martin married someone else because the Liu family's business was in decline. She knew better than anyone how important this new opportunity was to her father. Watching her slap herself again and again, both Misty and I remained expressionless. Finally, at the last step, she humiliatingly reached up to undo her shirt buttons. Misty quietly squeezed my hand, and I nodded to her. I said, "That's enough." I looked back at Carolina, devoid of emotion. "We're even now. Take your son and go home." Carolina said nothing more. Turning to leave, it seemed she had finally accepted that I was no longer the David she could summon and dismiss at will. The system's voice echoed again. "Paperman. Who would have thought? You're actually quite the big shot." I replied, "You're too kind. When I first bound to you, I only knew you had some money. How did I not know you were this powerful?" I said, a bit embarrassed. I was simping back then, had no time to manage my family business. Chapter 14. Carolina voluntarily left with Paul, and the system's reward was delivered. Eva was now just like any other child, running, jumping, and finally able to attend the preschool she had always dreamed of. The system said, All right, the mission is complete. Paperman, it's time for me to leave again. Until next time, if possible, I'd rather not see it again. Every time it appeared, something thrilling seemed to happen. It protested, hey, do you really not want to see me again that much? But I was worried. The two worlds had already connected. If they returned, would it pose a threat to my family? The system assured me, no, the mission is over. If they appear again, it will be part of another story. The choices are yours to make. That put my mind at ease. After everything settled, I let some information leak out. Old Man Lu, who once stood at the top, came sniffing around. But to be fair, he kept his word and never let that mother and son reappear in front of me. Sometimes Eva would ask about that little brother. Misty would answer for me, brother and his mom will also live happily. Happy? Probably not. Chapter 15. During a rare vacation, Misty and I took Eva to the amusement park, spending the entire day playing. With her health previously being poor, she had never had such a chance. We took her on almost all the rides she could go on. She even developed an interest in collecting badges, buying a bag full of cute cartoon character pins. On the way back, her sleepy eyes could barely stay open, but she stubbornly held onto her cotton candy, refusing to lie on my shoulder to rest. As the driver pulled up to the house and waited for the butler to open the gate, Eva spotted a figure crouching outside. She called out, "It's that big brother." Blood bonds are a mysterious thing. Eva seemed to naturally like Paul. I sighed. Who knew what trouble this kid was bringing now? But I knew Old Man Lu wouldn't leave his only grandson without supervision. I told the driver to drive in and ignore him. Misty gave me a sidelong glance and opened the car door. What do I do if my wife can't resist a kid asking for a quick answer? Paul entered the house, instinctively looking around at the surroundings. He marveled. This place is much bigger than Grandpa's. Seeing him sneakily take pictures, I said coldly, "If you dare send those to your mom, I'll throw you out right now." Paul wilted. Misty led him to the sofa and ordered the servants to prepare a guest room. Gently, she wiped Paul's sweaty face with a warm towel. "You haven't eaten yet, have you? I'll make you some wontons. Eva loves them. You should try them too. After you eat, take a bath and get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow, your dad will take you home." Paul, who had been silently compliant, suddenly changed his expression when he heard this. "This is my dad's house. Why should I leave?" He pushed the towel out of her hands, letting it fall to the ground. Misty said nothing, quietly cleaning up before heading to the kitchen with the servant. I walked over and sat beside Paul. In a stern voice, I said, "This is the second time you've disrespected her. If there's a third, I'll throw you out. Also, this villa was a gift from Eva's grandfather before our marriage. To be precise, this is her house." Paul gulped down the steaming wontons, muttering with grievance, "Why can't I have a mom like this?" Misty and I didn't look back, leaving him to the servants. Eva, seeing him tear up, struggled to hand him her cotton candy. She said, "Brother, sweet for you." Chapter 16. Misty said she wasn't unaffected by my past, but the child was innocent. After all, he's your son. Just take him home tomorrow. But in the next moment, she turned sharply, gritting her teeth. "But you better settle things, or get ready to sleep in the study." I quickly agreed. The next day, Misty held Eva as they watched us leave. She said gently, "Baby, say goodbye to brother." Eva waved her little hand. Paul, as if making a decision, ran to Eva and put something in her hand. But Eva pouted and said without mercy, "It's a badge." But Eva likes princess badges. "This skull badge is scary." Misty happily patted Eva's little head. He had chosen wrong, so his gesture lost its meaning. Paul lowered his head in frustration and quickly climbed into the car, until I returned Paul to his mother. He didn't say another word. It was for the best. This way, he could understand, we were from different worlds to begin with. Seeing me bring Paul out of the car, Carolina's face lit up briefly. She said, "My father came here for business, and I just came along." I didn't. I nodded. It didn't matter either way, as long as they didn't disturb me. Carolina, no longer confident, pleaded for me to come inside. After a moment's hesitation, I nodded. Talking things through might be for the best. After all, if things didn't get resolved, I couldn't bear my wife's wrath. The study's hard bed wouldn't be kind to my back. But going inside was out of the question. I told her to hand Paul over to the housekeeper, and we could go for a walk outside. Chapter 17. The park wasn't empty. A young couple was having a quarrel nearby, and the boy was racking his brain trying to coax the girl. Carolina let out a soft laugh. She said quietly, "Back then, you used to treat me like that." I nodded expressionlessly. I said, "Yes, when Martin left you to go to someone else, even in the middle of the night, I still came to pick you up. But you got drunk, refused to come with me, and called me useless. Before, whenever you were down, you'd think of me. But at the slightest beckoning from Martin, you'd throw me aside without hesitation. Remember when I helped deliver some documents to Martin and got into a car accident? My leg was broken, and I was lying in the hospital. You came and yelled at me, saying I delayed Martin's career. The doctor told you that a steel bar nearly pierced my heart. And what did you say? You said, "But you didn't die, right?" Later, when we had a child, you took my own flesh and blood and made him call someone else dad. Carolina, You don't need to remind me. I remember every single thing clearly. Seeing her pale face, I smiled and asked her, so, is there anything else you want to say to me? Carolina shook her head painfully. I'm sorry. I always thought you'd be waiting for me. I thought that no matter what I did, as long as I turned back, you'd accept me. I didn't want to believe that you really didn't want me anymore. That's why I did those extreme things. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I listened silently to her confession. She looked at me, her face pale. Do we really have no chance? I let out a mocking laugh. You came back with Paul, a name that brought me so much humiliation. You never thought to change it. Carolina, you're just attracted to power. You said you'd rather love the secondary male lead than the main one. Did you really do that? We're history. No one waits around for you. The secondary male lead and the female lead are never the right answer. Take your child and live a good life. Leave yourself some dignity. With that, I turned and left, not looking back. I let out a sigh of relief. My old back was saved. There was no way I was sleeping in the study. Chapter 18. Paul came looking for me once, but Carolina took him away forcibly. From then on, our family's life truly returned to peace. The connection between the two worlds grew deeper, and business gradually increased. The next time I saw them was at Eva's 18th birthday celebration. My business partner, Mr. Chen, had remarried after his wife's death, and his new wife was Carolina. They came as Mr. Chen's guests. Carolina looked much older. Following Mr. Chen humbly, Misty and I politely invited them inside. Paul Lu was there too, but he wasn't Lu anymore. His last name had changed to Wang. To be honest, I found it laughable. Carolina's obsession, something she wanted to flaunt, was now so cheap. Paul was taller than me. He nodded at me with restraint. Eva, looking like a little princess, was surrounded by people as she cut her cake. I could see the envy in his eyes. Mr. Chen wasn't a great drinker, and halfway through the event, he began to put his hands all over Carolina. He said, Mr. Wang, you don't know, her father went bankrupt and owed me a lot of money. He gave her to me as collateral. She's just a decoration to me. Her father is gone, and she has a kid. Where could she go if she left me? She's just lucky. If my first wife hadn't passed, she'd have been a mistress her whole life. I took a polite sip of wine and excused myself. It was nothing. I just needed to go tell Eva to be careful when choosing boyfriends in the future. Misty was on the balcony with Eva, getting some fresh air. Seeing me, she showed me what she was holding. She said, a boy gave this to me, but I'm too old for something like this. It was a small princess badge. Eva doesn't like it, I asked with a smile. She shook her head. It's too childish. I don't want it. Misty exchanged a look with me and said softly, if you don't want it, you don't have to take it. Eva can choose what she likes. Mom, you're the best. The badge was left behind on the balcony. See, when the timing is wrong, even attempts to make things right are meaningless. The banquet ended. Mr. Chen was carried out by Carolina and Paul. Carolina said softly, goodbye. Her spine had long since been broken, crushed by either Mr. Chen's weight or the weight of life. Paul barely held himself up, looking at me with hope in his eyes. I shook my head. No need for goodbyes. I closed the door, not looking back at them again.